Okay, lovely. We'll kick off. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is James. I'm the head of marketing here at Charities Digital. I'll be your host, and I'd like to give you a very warm welcome to today's session. So our session today, How to Use Automation to Build Meaningful Donor Connections by Redeye, is about marketing automation and how to best simplify processes to supercharge your fundraising efforts. The session will be delivered by Rachel, Marketing Director, and Will, Head of Sales at Redeye, and the session will cover, amongst other things, how to get started with automation to streamline processes, ways to use AI to create personalized and impactful donor experiences, and strategies to build lasting connections to keep driving long-term donations. Now, just before I hand over to Rachel, I just want to share a few house rules and pointers for today's session. So the session is being recorded and will be uploaded to watch on demand within a week's time. The slides and other supporting resources will also be made available to you. So don't worry if you've missed anything, we'll send it all across. If you need captions, closed captions are available for the session. So to enable these, in the bottom menu on the Zoom window, click the up arrow next to the closed caption and then press show subtitle. So during the webinar, please ask loads of questions in the Q&A section, which is located on the Zoom menu bar for Rachel and Will to address at the end of the presentation. If you like a question that's been asked and would like to promote that so that it gets spoken about first, just simply click on the thumbs up icon and it will upvote automatically. Please also feel free to share any other comments, experiences, or top tips in the chat section. Finally, if you encounter any sound or image issues, please let me know in the chat and we'll do our very best to get the session back to normal as soon as we can. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Rachel.
Perfect. Thank you, James, for the introduction. So yes, hello, everybody. I'm Rachel, the Marketing Director at Redeye. Thank you for joining the webinar today. We have a jam-packed webinar for you today. Hopefully, you're going to take away lots of tips, some ideas all around, as James has just said, marketing automation. Because what we want to help you with is how you can build better, more meaningful and longer lasting donor connections. And so when we say meaningful connections, what we mean is that ongoing experience that you can build with your donors, your volunteers and your fundraisers, all by communicating with them in a personalised way that makes them feel that you as the charity, you know them, you understand them, you know what they're interested in and that you really value their input. Because, you all know that when a donor gives to you, they don't get this physical object back in return. They get this mix of emotions, which is that ability to make them feel important, valued, and really effective in making a difference to the issues that they care about. So the way that you can evoke these emotions to create meaningful connections is then directly going to have an impact on whether they go to support you again. So therefore, it's obviously really important that, you can build out these meaningful connections with your donors so that you really have a long-lasting relationship with them, so they support you and your cause for years to come. Okay, so what it's worth, I suppose, just starting with and sort of mentioning is that however compelling your cause is, that doesn't necessarily guarantee loyalty from your donors. So they may choose to give, but they may give elsewhere unless that you deliver what we call these feel-good personalised experiences that they believe are for them. So a piece of research then from About Loyalty sort of shows that just this 1 point increase in developing your supporter loyalty can result in these great stats. So a 15% growth in retained donors and a 20% increase in income over a 3-year period. So, we want to then show you how marketing automation can help you with that. And, just like sort of, other industries such as retail, banking or travel, we know that you're in a really, really competitive market. And many of you are probably competing with lots of, well-known enterprise size establishments who can afford, really big TV, radio campaigns. And they utilize, a lot more of their funds on far more expensive ways to communicate with their donors. So that's why we want to share with you how marketing automation can assist you in getting that scale and that reach that you need, but without those really, really big promotional costs. And that's then going to allow you to spend more on the cause itself rather than the promotion, which is obviously the best outcome for your charity and for your donors. And when we say then marketing automation, what we are referring to is that sort of marketing automated activity that allows you to then do something more accurately, be more relevant, complete, marketing activities with greater efficiency, and generally do things at a greater scale. And that's all in comparison to if you were doing it individually or manually. And these automated, marketing activities might be automating campaigns, they might be nurturing workflows, they might be automating the collection or analysis of data, and personalized content, predictive. There are lots of components that fall under that sort of term of marketing automation. But essentially, like I said, we want to show you just a few key ways that we think it can help you and your charities today. Over to you, Will.
Thanks very much, Rach. Nice to meet everyone, and thank you very much for your time today. Will Binder, the head of sales here at Redeye. We are going to take sales out of the room, so rest assured we're not here to sell to you as such. What we're here to do is take the learnings that we've taken from the retail sector and had all of the conversations over the past 18 months to 2 years with your peers and charities and NGOs alike. We could talk all day about these things, to be honest with you. And as Rachel said, it's action-packed, but these are sort of the 5 key pillars that we'd like to talk you through in a step-by-step piece that we've consolidated into what we think are the key points that you can get some insights from today. So the first one being fewer people giving more, the cost of giving crisis, the static donation amounts, increasing participation in fundraising, and understanding AI, which is a large topic but a current one, and one that we can give some insights through. So we'll kick off with the fewer people giving more. So fundamentally, the UK Giving Report in 2024 basically shows that donor amounts are declining over the past few years, but this is in relation to more being donated. So fundamentally what that means is fewer people are giving more. And one of the first things that we'd like to cover, because I'm sure you're aware of this through your own organisations, and I'll let Rachel pick up edge in just a second, is there seems to be fewer people donating, but she's going to take you through some ideas of how you can drive those numbers back up to where you want them to be, but alongside maintaining that maximising of the high value donors within your database and within your customer set.
Thanks, Will. So yeah, I think one thing that we've noticed then when we have looked at many charities' websites is that you're actually only growing your database once somebody donates. And the donor sort of life cycle is similar to a customer retail life cycle, for example, in that there's always a period of discovery before conversion. So, just simply making sure that you've got a sign-up form on your website that can allow sort of prospective donors to sign up to your communications so they can get more information about your cause. This then allows you to trigger that automated prospective donor welcome journey and nurture them along to their first donation with you. And we know, like I said, from other industries that welcome journey is arguably one of the most important automated campaigns you can send, because first impressions really, really do count. Also, I would take into consideration what we would say their browsing data on your website as well. So you can ensure that sort of welcome journey is very personalized to the particular appeal that they might have been looking at, as that just really helps set that relationship off to a good start right from that very first message that they get from you. Secondly, if you currently have, like I said, this sort of trend that fewer people are sort of donating, then you need to make sure that within your donor database who are what we would say your VIP donors or your most valuable donors, because you need to make sure that you are treating these differently. And when I say sort of VIP or valuable, that doesn't immediately mean the small percentage who make those really, really huge donations to you.
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
We're having a bit of an issue, not on your side, but someone has pinned you to the chat, which has made the slides disappear.
Right, okay.
So if anyone is able to unpin Rachel, that should then make the slides appear again. So if someone could just confirm in the chat that has been sorted, and then I will let Rachel get on with it. That's unfortunately not something I can do on my side.
You're on a roll there, Rach.
I know, you're doing really well. Sorry.
I'll go back for everybody.
Interrupt.
Make sure.
Okay, it seems to be getting some positive comments through in the chat. So I will let you get on with it. Sorry about that.
No worries. Hopefully everyone can see the slides just now. So yeah. So I'll just cover the second point again then, which is where I was talking about sort of this, high value segment. So
sorry, Rach, just pause. There's about 6 more coming through saying you still can't see.
Right, okay. I think, James, you're on mute as well.
Maybe if you double click on Rachel, that should unpin. Okay, success, sorted, all good now. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks, everyone, for their patience. Please do continue.
Okay, so yeah, I was actually making a really, really great point here again, third time, because it's that important around, like I said, high value donors and sort of VIPs. So yeah, in your general database, there may be those that we will define and call valuable. So I'm not talking about a small percentage of those who make those huge donations to you, but out of your general database, there'll be those which you would want to segment as valuable. And there are many ways that then you could sort of identify what you would say is truly valuable. So you can look at the total value they have donated over their lifetime so far, and has it hit a sort of threshold that you deem as high? Or is it above the average lifetime donated amount? Or maybe you look at the number of times that they've donated in their lifetime. Again, you may have a goal that you want people to donate at least 3 times. So, is your valuable pot, people who go above and beyond that, maybe have donated 5 times or more, for example. Or maybe it's the frequency of how they donate. So maybe somebody's really, really valuable to you if they are a monthly donor versus somebody who just donates sort of once a year. So for example, I could be, I could have made just 2 donations of £100 to a charity, whereas Will could have been donating £5 a month for 2 years. So we're 2 very different types of donors, but we're really valuable in our own ways. So what I would say is you all, as your charities, you need to define what are your important donor behaviours, and it's probably going to look different at each of your charities, which is why it's unique to you, and it's something that you really must define. But what I would say when thinking about it is, how can you think about it in terms of what's showing signs of longevity and loyalty? But then once you know what those data points are, you then, you can use the power of automation to easily pull those data points into a segment for you. And that segment will always be up to date with all of the donors who are showing that ideal behavior, and therefore, like I said, your most valuable segment. But they then need to be looked after and spoken to as valuable donors, and they're not sent the same communications as everyone else. So as I was saying earlier, you need to work on building those feel-good, personalised experiences for them. So like I said, you make them feel special and valued, and that's really how you're going to really start to develop meaningful connections with those. Okay.
Thanks very much, Rach. So the next part we'd like to talk about here is the cost of giving crisis, which I'm sure most people on here are familiar with. This is really reflected in that reduced number of donors that we mentioned on the first slide that Rachel's just talked through. The Charities Aid Foundation, as it says, has found that 90% of charities are concerned about the rise in living costs, and that almost 60% of those charities are concerned about the donators' inability to donate in the first place and continue to do so. On top of that, I'm sure many have experienced the fact that because there's this crisis, you actually now have an increased demand due to that cost of living. So it's kind of a perfect storm in many ways. And we know that you need to find a way of driving those donations, and give an option to do that is what we call flexible giving. So it allows those donors to tailor the amount they give depending on the economic circumstances they might be going through. The digital payment experts PayPoint found nearly that 2/3 of people who do make those regular donations to a charity would really welcome that flexibility to change the amounts that they donate at a given time. And that's exactly what it does. It's donations freed from the strict rules that are normally and traditionally set in place. It allows individuals to donate according to their means at the time, to pause, and it increases the donations and improves retention over time is what we've found. So, consider, for example, the cost of giving crisis has led to people either stopping those donations as they've prioritized different expenditures and things that are more important at the time. Some of them may not return to donating, even when, they come through the crisis and things improve for them economically, or simply they don't have the time, they forget, and there's numerous other reasons where that might not continue on. So what it does is allow you to continue that relationship while continuing to drive in the donations and the revenue, even if it's smaller, more regular amounts. So Rachel's now going to talk you through some ways that you can manage the cost of giving crisis and maximize the trend of that idea around flexible giving.
Thanks, Will. So yeah, if we look at that, the cost of giving crisis, and that's that Will highlighted first, which is 90% of you are concerned with your costs, then this is where multi-automation can really help you with being more cost efficient. So direct mail can traditionally be a method that everyone uses to talk to their donors, but it's costly, it's not very efficient, and it's definitely not sustainable. So, one idea is that you could automate a campaign whereby your supporters then can opt out of direct mail and update their preferences so they only want to receive digital communications only. And obviously, as we all know, digital communications are far easier to personalize in order to build these meaningful connections that we keep talking about. The second point then, if we look at this trend of flexible giving, which Will has sort of highlighted, what I would say is you probably want to think about which are the best segments to offer this to versus sort of broadly offering it to everybody. So I would say your one-off donor segment is a really, really good place to start. Because as we know, and again, not too dissimilar to other industries, the single purchase segment, like I said, or in your case, the single donation segment is often always the biggest. So by encouraging maybe a second, more flexible donation to that pot, you're more likely, hopefully, to persuade them to give again, rather than just asking them to donate a specific amount that matches what they did before, or even ask them to donate more. So by using this sort of tactic, you are then slowly sort of moving them to become what we would then say that multi-donor. And again, we know from other industries that once you have engaged or you've transacted twice, you're then 54% more likely to do it third time. And so this concept can still apply here. So they'll be much more likely then to donate a third time to you and so on. And obviously remember with that as well, one key automated campaign, of course, is a thank you campaign. It's extremely important. However big or small they have then decided to donate, it's vital that sort of campaign is in place, as that's really, really key to sort of developing those sort of feel good factor emotions. And the third idea to kind of run through you all is there may be some people that might not be able to donate for a few months. So rather than just altering the amount that they give, you don't want to lose them as a donor forever. So there's this concept of snoozing. So it's the same concept that can often be used to stop people fully unsubscribing from your emails. So you can offer them the opportunity to, like I said, snooze for a particular period of time. Or it also can be used where people can sort of snooze themselves out of a particular campaign. So it's often commonly used in retail. They offer their database, their customers, if somebody doesn't want to receive sensitive campaigns like Mother's Day or Father's Day, or hear about, really, really heavy sales periods like Black Friday. So in this case, you could just set up a really simple microsite, for data collection, and you could offer your donors then the ability to just snooze their monthly donation, whether that's the 1, 3, 6 months, whatever time period that you would like to offer. But if you do that, again, make sure you have got an automated welcome back campaign ready for when that snooze period ends. So then you can sort of, again, welcome them back with open arms, tell them about all the great things that they've missed, that your cause has been doing in the meantime. And that should all, encourage to help them to get back onto continuing their donations with you.
Thanks, Rach. The next topic, we'll talk about the static donation amounts. Now, typical donations, as you'd imagine, like anything that you've purchased or done anything with over the past few years, has been eroded by inflation. As we covered, the sector is facing that cost of living crisis, which has led to reduction in donations, as well as inflation on the top, which has actually devalued further what's going on. Even though that average monthly amount of donation has increased since in 2023, it does pretty much mask that trend that the typical donation to a charity hasn't increased since 2017. So that's quite a substantial amount of time. The mean of £65 is inflated by that number of larger donations. And if you look at that from a median point of view, it was £20, basically unchanged for the 7th year in a row. Looking at the analysis by Pro Bono Economics, the typical donation, if it had kept up with inflation, would be now over £25. So we can see that effect. And even though people have moved away from what we call cash donations to more digital, so digital rather than paper, there's still a concept of being stuck in that banknote denominations. So the 5, the 20, the £10 donations, where you can be more flexible around that. And Rachel, in a second, is going to talk you through the ideas on how you can stretch those donation amounts for your donors to help bring more in and keep that retention as well.
Thanks, Will. So yes, and again, just, referring back to sort of, retail, they use this concept of spend stretch, which is essentially how can, you get a little bit more than what you normally would do. And essentially in that case, it's they're wanting to increase that average order value. But the same concept can be applied here, but it has to be done realistically, and it has to be done personalized using the data that you have on what is that donor's usual average donation amount. And you just want to encourage them to just add a little more. So just like in retail, they wouldn't advertise a £200 pair of trainers to somebody who usually has an average order value of £20. So in this case, you wouldn't, you shouldn't try and encourage somebody who maybe normally donates £5 to jump all the way up to £25. But what you could do here is you could sort of set up a simple automated campaign that goes to an engaged segment of donors, and that donation amount can just be a simple piece of dynamic content that will personalize to every recipient to show their next really realistic donation bracket based on the average donation amount that they normally always do. So again, that doesn't need to be done with multiple sends and multiple emails. That can just be one small piece of dynamic personalized content within your one campaign that you're sending out. Another sort of campaign idea, though, is this sort of, concept of rounding up to the nearest pound or significant amount, because really, potentially, your donors might appreciate more of a sort of just a general request for a roundup than a blanket request to really jump up to a next sort of donation tier. So it could be used a bit like a payday campaign. You could ask them, would they like to round up this month? So for example, if somebody gives £8.75 per month, you could, ask them, would they like to do, a roundup to maybe £9 or even £10 this month? Because all of those little sort of stretch donation amounts, would add up over sort of, a segment of donors as well. Okay, back to you, Will.
Thanks, Rach. So yeah, part 4. So last but not least, near enough. What this looks at is the likelihood and the data around the participation in fundraising. Now, whenever any country, any group of people go through, a bit of an economic climate downfall, and the political landscape either doesn't feel great or look great, there is generally, in my opinion, a desire for a bit of fun and a bit of a positive change, to feel good about things that are going on. And doing some research, we found that the Donor Pool Spring Report states that about 44% of the public are likely to take part in a fundraising event, which is identical to just about a year ago. But there's around 10% on top of that that are undecided. So we view it as there's plentiful amount of opportunity there for you to engage with that public and encourage them to take part in those events. Within Redeye, regardless of whether it's a retailer or whatever it might be, we always look at trend analysis based on what we call basics. So one of those will be the likes of age and demographic data. So what are the different trends based on age groups or otherwise? And what we can see is from 18 to 24-year-olds, they are leading the way in their keenness to be involved, as well as, you know, a really close second really by the 25 to 34-year-olds. And when we look at creating those segments based on demographic information that we can garner, when you look at those reasons for wanting to take part, there are some quite clear standouts, some of which are: how will the money be used? Will I be taking part in a team? Will I be motivated? Will I be encouraged by friends and family? So you can use those different bits of information to split the generations and market to them in a different way. So what Rachel's going to do is talk you through the ways that marketing automation sides can maximize some of those reasons why different groups of people would be motivated to take part with you.
Thanks, Will. So yeah, firstly, automation, can be used throughout that whole fundraising journey. So, right from encouraging people to take part in the latest, opportunities. Maybe you have training sessions to prepare them for particular events, appreciation messages for all the hard work that they're putting in, right all the way till those sort of post-communication, post-event communications. And you can get them set up all as automated journeys that are just running in the background, helping you deliver that experience that the fundraisers need, but with minimal manual communication resources from yourself. Secondly, then, is looking at segments. And I think this is a huge opportunity for sort of charities to do more. And it's actually just really understanding your database and the different segments of fundraisers that you have. So, in this case, you'd want to make sure that you're talking differently to whether they are a first-time fundraiser or somebody that might have done a handful of them, all the way to somebody that does them regularly. Because if you think about it, somebody who has never done one before, they might need more ideas for inspiration. There's even opportunities to collect preferences on what they like to do to be able to guide those ideas, versus somebody who maybe is a regular fundraiser, probably just needs to know when is the next event that they're most likely going to take part in. And then also, going back to the slides that Will's just shared, the stats do show that the younger demographic then are more likely to take part. So another idea is generational or age-based segmentation. And I see this as such a huge opportunity that actually not many businesses are doing yet, because you want to speak differently to an 18-year-old versus a sort of 60-year-old. And if you can speak to those differently, that's really, really crucial for, building these meaningful connections. But, those, number of segments that I've just mentioned, so whether that's a single fundraiser, a multi-fundraiser, age-based segmentation, that might sound really overwhelming with lots of individual emails that you have to set up. When again, as I mentioned before, in fact, it can just be one single email that just uses dynamic content. So, in the example here, if you are sending a fundraising email, you may have a top section, which is going to talk about, an introduction to fundraising. A middle section might be some of the ideas that you want to suggest. And then the bottom section might be, okay, well, what do they need to do next? So each of those sections can display slightly different, whether it's language, content, or imagery, depending on which segment that recipient is in. So, for example, the intro, might be sort of slightly more exciting, but reassuring sort of language if it's going to somebody that's, in your single fundraising segment, so they've never taken part in one before, versus, that language might be more sort of straight to the point for somebody who's in your multi-fundraiser segment, who's done lots and lots of events. Or, an example, the middle section, it might show, and this isn't a stereotype, but maybe more physically demanding fundraising ideas to somebody that might be in your under 30 segment versus, somebody who is in your over 60 segment. You might want to show them less physically demanding, ideas. There's lots of sort of potential essentially to swap and change out the content depending on, who that individual is that's going to be receiving it. So whatever sort of, like I said, level of personalization and dynamic content you want to use, what I suppose I'm trying to get across is essentially you are still sending one email out to encourage fundraising, but it's going to be personalized to all the different groups of fundraisers that receive it. The final idea here on this slide is around sort of gamification. So sort of, Will mentioned on the slide before that there is, a certain percentage of people that would be motivated to take part if there were things like rewards for milestones. So that can be achieved through things like gamification in email, and which is particularly important to that younger generation. We know that they just really, really like anything gamified. So if you know that they're part of a fundraising group, then maybe we could think about ways to show like a leaderboard or when key group milestones are reached and have that as automated campaigns, but you could even make it fun with interactivity in the email, such as like scratch and reveal this email to see who's at the top of the leaderboard. But if they're like an individual, you can still gamify that experience for that individual fundraiser, have it as like a ladder that they're climbing, to reach their sort of fundraising goals, and, encourage them just to get to that next level by showing them, what else the charity could achieve if they could just get a little bit more around amount of fundraising. So I think, again, just to build these sort of feel-good experiences, there's a way that you can try and build a little bit of fun and gamification into some of the campaigns that you might be sending as well.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rach. On to the final topic, and probably the most emotive subject today, and the biggest one. Thanks, Rach. There's a few key takeaways from this. We're asked about AI all the time. We do incorporate AI into our technology, but we do it in the right ways. And our key message for this is that it's there to enable you, not to replace you. And I think that's one of the main things to understand. Now, just looking at the statistics, 87% of people says they would pay attention or would want to pay attention to what their chosen charity or charities are saying about AI and how they're using it. I'd probably view that as, well, if they're going to incorporate AI as job replacement, then it's probably not the right message to send, but that isn't what it's there to do. It's certainly not what it's there to do with Redeye. About 45% of you have said that they don't yet use generative AI, like big, large language models like ChatGPT, and 14% planning to begin using AI in the next 12 months. Now, just to break this down, there's two ways that I think it empowers you, and that is to save time through things like large language models. But the second and most powerful one that you hear about all the time, before I hand over to Rachel, is how can we use AI and large language models to understand our customers better and do all the wonderful things that we've actually just spoken to. It's there as a supplement, not as a replacement. And if used correctly, it can be a really, really powerful tool. So I'll hand over to Rachel now.
Well, so yeah, as you were sort of just saying, you're not alone if you're sitting there and you're potentially slightly afraid of AI. There's lots of people across the, different industries that actually don't really know what it is, what they should be doing with it. So hopefully, I'm going to go through some ideas here that can kind of reassure you in terms of the ways that you can really, really get value from it, because I think we have to all understand that AI is now part of that marketing sphere that we sort of work in, and it's only going to become more ingrained in what we do. But the way that I like to think about it is, how can AI then help you with your marketing challenges? So as sort of Will mentioned on the slide, it can be really an enabler and not something that should hinder what you do, but really, really help. So just we've all got hundreds of marketing challenges, but I've just sort of called out 4 on this sort of slide to go through in terms of the ways that AI can help. So for example, it can help you be more efficient with your campaign creation. So as Will was just saying, in terms of Gen AI and AI assistants and things like that within marketing platforms, they can help you with things like creating your campaigns, thinking of your subject lines, writing your body copy, giving you CTA ideas, writing your SMS copy, even your imagery needed. So, all of that is there to help you be more efficient with your time and your resources that your more sort of marketing team has. Another common challenge that we as marketers face is getting our campaigns and getting our emails into the inbox, and deliverability is a really, really vital factor, you know, impacting whether your donors and your fundraisers are even engaging with your campaigns. So predictive AI, such as predictive frequency models, they can then help predict the frequency of emails that a donor or fundraiser is likely to be happy receiving. So then you can use that to make sure that you're not emailing them too much, or are you emailing them enough? And this is obviously really, really important for deliverability, because the more that you email somebody who does not open or engage with your emails, then you do look like a bad sender. And that's then going to impact your deliverability of all of the rest of your campaigns, and also, you know, impact the deliverability of your campaigns to the, you know, the high value donors that we talked about earlier, that you really, really want to make sure that you get your messages out to. Probably one of the biggest then sort of challenges that you may face is sort of, you know, donor churn. So, you know, AI can help here with things again like predictive models. So AI can then be applied onto your donor database, and then it can predict who is showing signs that they're most likely are likely to stop donating, and that will be doing it by looking at their past and previous sort of donation behavior. And then once you have those segments, then you can then automate that campaign to anybody that's in that predictive churn segment. And obviously that's when then you can sort of, you know, be clever and try to excite them and re-engage them back. So then before they get to a point when they've stopped donating. And there's also sort of models that can even look at things that who is likely to unsubscribe. So again, you can try and re-engage them differently from what your usual campaigns are, to sort of captivate their interest again before you lose them as a subscriber for good, because obviously that's then when, you know, as soon as you've lost somebody, it is, you know, very, very difficult to get them to resubscribe again. The final point then is that AI can then help you with what we would say is finding opportunities in your data. So, you know, we as marketers, we look at reports and we look at data a lot. But sometimes it's really difficult when we're looking at all of that for us to spot trends, you know, outliers, or even sort of, like I said, cross correlation between certain data points. So this is then where AI can help, because AI-based reporting will analyze all your data and then look out for those interesting insights and share those with you. So it may be that there's like a really interesting pool of donors that are showing signs, you know, to be very, very engaged, that you would have never sort of pieced together yourself. Or, you know, it might help show you out of, you know, all the campaigns that you've got running, you know, which segments are most likely to respond better to these high performing campaigns than others. Or it could even show you like a, you know, a correlation between two data points that you would have never looked at before, such as like the timing of the email and the age of the donor. So, you know, essentially to sort of wrap it up, you know, what we were sort of saying at the beginning, that, you know, AI really is here to sort of help you with finding those areas of opportunity that then allows you to then maximize further. Over to you, Will.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rach. Just as a little bit of a wrap up, so there's an awful lot to cover there, and I thought the best way to do this would be to simplify some of the things we get asked all the time, and that is, what is predictive analytics and AI within Redeye? So to give you a little bit of a visual, for example, we have 6 models that are really effective, and one of the things we get asked about all the time, and the one thing that people get a little bit blown away by, is how they can use that to essentially create user groups that flow into those marketing channels that Rach is talking about. So the 6 you can see there, for example, is probability of purchase within 30 days, second in 90 days, becoming a VIP. Now, how you define a VIP is very different from business to business and cohort to cohort. So these aren't set models. These are something that we can work around. Also helps you look at predicted lifetime value of 12 months. So it helps from a financial perspective. And then the 2 ones that are simple to start with, but really powerful, is that lapsed customer and the unsubscribe over the next 90 days. So to give you an example on the right-hand side, although really powerful, very simple at the same time, is you can actually reduce the lapsing of the churn of your database just by creating a simple segment of removing or excluding high likelihood unsubscribers. And we find in the data actually that you increase revenues while drastically reducing churn. Now, that's one of the things we hear from all marketers, no matter whether you're in retail, banking, travel, the NGO and charity sector, is that's a problem, is we want to increase the revenues. So we think that means sending more and doing more. Well, we actually say less is more. We actually say, well, if you just look at that as an example, you're taking out the high risk while increasing the revenue, and also combining all the other bits that Rach has spoken to, the personalised and behavioural and the clever things you can do with marketing, that revenues increase, the lapse decreases, and you're building models on top. If you'd like to talk to us about this, more than welcome. Probably a good way to round off is you've probably never heard of Redeye, or very few of you have. So we thought as a final little bit at the end is to explain why we're really having this chat today and why we've partnered with Charity Digital. We've been around for a long time. I refer to us as a well-kept secret. We work with some of the world's largest retailers. I can name drop a few afterwards if you'd like to ask who they are, but you'd never know we were in the background. And what we've done over the last quarter of a century is not just defined and enhanced our proprietary technology, but we've learned an awful lot as well. Previous to 18 months ago, I worked for a travel company that exclusively worked with not-for-profit organizations. Probably maybe some of you on the call. And when I joined Redeye, one of the things I was asked by our board is there other people that we could be taking this to? And my first answer after seeing the technology and what we know was, I can see a real value to the NGO and not-for-profit sector here. And we've got a very philanthropic business that would love to support you guys. And as I said at the start, if all you do is come away with a better understanding today of how you can do things better and what you can take from a quarter of a century of learning how retailers are doing things and how they're having success, then that's great for us. And one of the things we'd like to do is run non-obligatory, very non-committal consultation sessions where you can come and ask us, talk to us about the challenges you have, the objectives you have, and we'll give you as much information and tailor those sessions for you to say, this is what you could be thinking of, on top of kind of what the broad spectrum is that we discussed today. So really hope you found it helpful. Hope you got an understanding of why we're here and why we want to help you. Probably open up to the Q&A, and if anyone wants to get in touch with us afterwards, please feel free to do so. You'll see just at the bottom there, we do have a dedicated page on our website to support in the industry. So if you'd like to visit that rather than talk to us, feel free to do so. Thanks for your time.
Right. Thank you both. Really interesting talking points there. And you can tell because we've had so many questions through in the chat. We've actually had loads through, so we'll do our best to get through as many as we can in the next 15 minutes. But if you like a question in the chat, feel free to upvote it in the Q&A box, sorry. And if you have any more questions, please keep posting them through. We'll get through as many as we can. So far, the most popular one is, how do you do roundup campaigns in reality? It sounds like a lot of admin to action.
Well, in terms of the admin in the back end, I can't probably comment too much on how that's set up and how your donation amounts are collected. But in terms of that experience and that communication to the individuals, as I was saying, that can really simply be a piece of dynamic content. You're just going to be sending one campaign out. That campaign will then look, what was somebody's previous donation amount? And then you would say, if it was this, change to this or show this. So that's essentially how dynamic content can work. And so from an admin marketing point of view of setting up the campaign, that would be really, really simple through sort of dynamic content.
I could probably help answer that first question on the back end admin piece, Rach, if you want me to cover that.
Yeah, right.
So where we came from at Redeye and a number of organizations, I'm not trying to sell us in here, is one thing we would first look to do is help you with the data. You've probably got data all over the place, some in CRM, some in finance transactional systems. The idea is to create a single source of truth, and that means pulling all that data into one pot, and that's what we first specialize in. So when we talk about being admin heavy, we make sure it isn't. So you just see the data and you can use it as you wish. That's our problem. That's our job to do for you. So not something you should be concerned about from a day-to-day, I'm going to have to do this and that. The point is we give you your day-to-day job back while the system does the work for you.
Right. Thank you both. Next one. Do you need email marketing consent to send a more transactional thank you email?
So as long as there's no marketing messages in there, then no. So that would be the same as a thank you for your order. You do need marketing consent if you're going to be placing marketing messages like you're asking them for another donation or you're promoting another event or whatever it may be. If it's just a thank you, just like a thank you in the sort of retail world, then that was a transactional email. So it depends on the content that you can be putting in there, as well as saying thank you.
You can permission both, sorry, as well. So for example, in our system, you could say, Will is unsubscribed from newsletters, but he's subscribed to particular fund information or appeal information. So you can see that you can send to some and not others.
Yeah, segmenting it.
Yeah.
Next question. We struggle to collect personal information to help us understand and segment our supporters better. Do you have any tips on how we can do this without seeming too intrusive?
Do you want me to take one?
You go for it first and then I'll chip in at the end next time.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of things you can do. One is just through simple what we call microsites or pop-up forms on your website as an example. Something that organizations like ourselves can set up. So it's just simple form information that they fill out, then gets ingested into the likes of Redeye. You can also do tagging. So if you want to know what someone's looking at on your website and you have their email address and information, we'll be able to see what they're looking at and behaving as. So if I clicked on, for example, certain funds or projects that you've got ongoing, be able to see which funds and projects are really interested to Will and not just a broadscape. But they're two of the main ones that we see popularity with.
And just to sort of add to that, then maybe from the reason why, from your sort of donor's perspective, as much as you can kind of tell them, like, why should they be giving you this information? What are you going to be using it for? So you're going to be using it to make sure that you really, really provide them the best, emails and campaigns and information that's going to be relevant for them. So if you're explaining the why to them a little bit more as well, and then a way that we've seen it again in other industries, which may be a way that charities can also use it, as again, is making it a bit fun and gamifying it. So sometimes for loyalty programs, in the retail industry, they might have little games when they can say, like a quiz. So they can find out more about the information, more about the person and collect their preferences that way, but actually you're doing it in a fun way, such as, like a quiz or something like that.
A bit more creative with that.
Yes.
Great, thank you. What email marketing platforms and CRMs do you recommend and what are others using? So that's a great prompt for anyone in the chat if you've got one that you really like. But over to Rachel or Will.
I'll let Will take this one down to a T.
Taking Redeye out the room, it's really depends on what you want to do. And in all honesty, it depends on your budget. So there's some really good CRM systems out there. You went to Salesforce or a Microsoft Dynamics. If you've got the budget, great system to have. HubSpot and others. But again, we'd probably recommend talking to a number of organizations about what it is they do. Hopefully you'd get a good person where they don't just demo for you and show you the platform, but they actually ask you some proper questions. If you'd like us to give you some more insights on who we'd recommend, really happy for you to set some time up with us and I'll talk to you about what you're actually trying to achieve and I can point you in the right direction. If not Redeye, others, and we'll, like you say, take Redeye out of the room and make sure you get the best solution for you.
Perfect, thank you. Is it best to start segmenting from the moment they sign up for a newsletter, for example, i.e. should we be adding options for people on what they want to hear from us about instead of just one blanket sign up?
Yes, most definitely. I think throughout this, hopefully we've talked about sort of segmentation and personalization and sort of, first impressions count. So, as much as you can start them off on that sort of personalized journey, so they're just starting to receive, relevant, campaigns and messaging from the get-go. that's really going to help building with this, you know, sort of meaningful connection that we keep talking about.
Great, thank you. What's the best way to deal with different frequencies of giving when setting up automations with an ask? Do you want me to say that one more time?
Yes.
What's the best way to deal with the different frequencies of giving when setting up automations? With it says with an ask. I guess it's what's the best way to start with the different frequencies? I think is that question.
So yeah, maybe sort of different frequencies of campaigns that are sort of going out.
How do you choose, I guess, where to start?
Yeah, okay, that's a good one. Yeah. So, you know, there's lots of, you know, you should always have a percentage of campaigns that are going out that are automated. And then, you know, we call them what the rest of them are sort of your general newsletters and things that they go out. So we would always say that your automations are probably more personalized because they're based on the behavior they're normally always triggered based on somebody's behavior and what they've done. So I would say they would take precedent over your general newsletters that sort of go out. But, you know, there's things like the AI predictive frequency model that I sort of mentioned, and these things can help understand in your database you know, who is happy to receive more emails than others, because you do have this sort of concern of not making sure you're over emailing, because you don't want to then, I said, disengage your donors, or even, like I said, worse, get them sort of to unsubscribe. So there's tools like that that you can use to sort of manage the frequency of what somebody might like to receive. Hopefully that might have answered a bit of the question that we struggled to understand, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I think we have, but yeah, let us know in the chat if we didn't. So Diane says, can you define 1 point increase in developing donor communication?
1 point increase. Okay, this might have been at the beginning of the slides. Yes, so in the about loyalty report where I got those statistics from, over the research over the past sort of 2 years, they've sort of developed a 7-point sort of loyalty scale, so to speak. So those at the very, very bottom completely disengage in the brand versus those at the top are extremely sort of loyal to the charities, sorry. So they was kind of saying all the tactics that you can do, which is a lot of things that we've mentioned here, even just by jumping someone from, you know, 2 to 3 on that scale is going to have an impact. And you don't have to think about going from 2 to 6. So to speak. So it's all these little incremental changes just over the long run going to be helping with these meaningful connections, helping you said, like I said, build this sort of feel good experience. So it's lots of little incremental changes, essentially what we're trying to get across there.
Yeah, all adds up.
Yeah.
This is a great one. I'm sure a lot of charities thinking the same. This all sounds really great. What are the financial costs of setting all this up?
Are you asking in terms of a red-eye cost, or?
I would assume in terms of a red-eye cost, but maybe just a scale across different options, maybe.
Yeah, I'll be really transparent. So there are some low-end costing products out there that you could use. If you're looking to just send emails and not use it as much as a CDP or a CRM, the likes of MailChimp is probably a good option. They often have email bundles, so you pay for what you send. There are a few things just to ask them when you talk to them, and that is, are we on a dedicated IP? Are we on a shared IP? Because essentially, if you're paying per email, you want to make sure it gets through. In terms of our system, we price on database size and email send size. So if you said to us, we've got 10,000 records that we want to send to, we would price to that. So you can use it as much as you want, and we price to it, and we include all the channels. So we do the setup inclusive of the license, and the channels is email, SMS, WhatsApp, socials, direct mail, all of it. Our costing range is anywhere from about £500 a month plus, depending on what you want to do. So we'd welcome just to have a conversation with us and ask us, you know, what your challenges are. We do have a charitable rebate as well, which we'd like to offer to the industry. So that would also be factored in. Really broad question, and I wouldn't want to speak too much to other companies because they might say that's not true, or it's not my place to say. But they're in terms of the lower end costing options, we see MailChimp pop up more often than not.
Great, thanks, Will. And it is a difficult question to answer, but it's always one that's on people's mind, isn't it?
Of course.
There was one question that was, will the slides be sent around afterwards? And yes, they will. So we've got two more. So if we've probably got time for an extra one, if anyone's got an extra question, so feel free to post it in the box. What is the best way to phrase encouraging people to donate more without the prospect of losing the donor? Quite a difficult balance with that.
So the phrasing, so you talked about phrasing there, so that would be out the language that you're using. So, what you've got to think about is that you're nurturing them on a journey here. And, it's all very emotional, as I was saying at the very, very beginning. So, that person wants to feel valued, they want to feel important, and they want to feel like they're making a difference to the cause. So as long as you're trying to weave in that emotional language within there, and you're showing them, like I said, what impact their donation can really make. But I wouldn't also do this as a one-off. These things are journeys, they are nurturing. So how can you drip feed that sort of information? And then that would sort of then make sense at the very, very end if you then wanted to go, look, we've shown you all of these great things, But like I said, there might be the option that you don't just suddenly go for a dramatic sort of increase in donation amount. Maybe there are sort of smaller tactics like a roundup, just to sort of ease them to giving a little bit more. And then that might be a bit more realistic in however many, campaigns time that you then ask them for a bit more of a jump and an increase. So it's a nurture journey, I'd say, and really think about the emotive language that you use.
Yeah, really like that. That makes a lot of sense. And so, yeah, final one that we have had. Can predictive AI be a useful tool in determining the level of engagement of each email subscriber? More so in a context where open rate information is no longer accurate due to privacy changes impacting information collection.
Yeah. Do you want to take this one, Will?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the answer is yes, absolutely. Definitely a really useful tool and one of the big USPs that we have. So yes, any system you would hope would be able to tell you someone opened and engaged with this link or whatever else, but you're right, there are other privacy settings. The predictive AI analytics looks a lot more than that. It looks at the customer's behavior, and there's numerous lines of code of how it does that. But if you were just looking at example of the likelihood to unsubscribe, likelihood to lapse, and a few others, you can build that on top of what you already know. And yes, it's absolutely a brilliant way of doing it. We could take you through some examples of how that's been really effective for a number of our customers, which we've got some case studies on if you'd like to see them.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea. Again, all about the segmentation. But yeah, thank you so much. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. So thank you so much to Rachel and Will. That was a really great webinar. And thank you to everyone who attended. Yeah, really great, really engaging webinar. If you could share your feedback with us, that'd be fantastic. So we've pasted the link in the chat, and you'll also receive a prompt when you leave the page. In today's session, we've talked about AI. So if anyone's interested, we do have an in-person AI summit on the 17th of October at Resource for London. And the details for that will be shared in the chat. But thank you again to Rachel and Will, and hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.